Millionaire panics after 900 M Cyberattack until a poor 7-year-old girl says something that breaks his heart. Together, they will touch your soul. Before we dive into this moving story of sadness and isolation, drop a comment with your location and subscribe for more emotional content. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the 42nd floor of the downtown Manhattan skyscraper as 28-year-old tech mogul Alexander Hayes threw his coffee mug against the wall. His hands trembled uncontrollably as he stared at the computer screen displaying numbers that made his stomach churn violently. $900 million. Gone. Vanished in a sophisticated cyber attack that had penetrated his company's most secure systems just hours ago, leaving behind a digital wasteland that threatened to destroy everything he had built. "This can't be happening," Alexander whispered hoarsely, running his fingers through his perfectly styled blonde hair for the 100th time that morning. His navy Armani suit, usually immaculate and pressed to perfection, was now wrinkled and disheveled from hours of frantic pacing around his expansive corner office. The young millionaire had built Hayes Technologies from absolutely nothing, transforming a small startup operation in his college dormitory into a billion-dollar empire before his 30th birthday. Now, watching his stock prices plummet in real time like stones thrown from a cliff, he felt like everything he had ever worked for was crumbling into dust before his very eyes. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his office offered a breathtaking view of the bustling city below. But Alexander couldn't see any of its beauty today. All he could focus on were the endless notifications flooding his multiple computer screens, each one bringing worse news than the last. News outlets were already picking up the story, and his phone hadn't stopped ringing for the past 3 hours. Board members, investors, clients, and reporters were all demanding answers that he simply didn't have. The office door creaked open slowly, and Maria Gonzalez, his longtime housekeeper and one of the few people he trusted completely, peeked in hesitantly. Her kind, weathered face showed deep concern as she took in the scene of destruction around the office. Papers were scattered everywhere. Multiple coffee cups sat abandoned on various surfaces, and the smell of stress and desperation hung heavy in the air. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry to bother you during this terrible time, but—" She paused, seeing his devastated expression and the tears that had dried on his cheeks. Behind her, 2 small figures emerged from the shadows of the hallway like ghosts materializing from another world. 7-year-old Emma stood protectively in front of her baby brother Jake, who was barely walking at just 1 year old. Emma's long, dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, secured with a rubber band that had seen better days, and her worn yellow dress had been carefully mended multiple times with different colored threads that told the story of their difficult circumstances. Despite their obvious poverty, there was something remarkable about the way she carried herself. A dignity and intelligence that seemed far beyond her tender years. Her bright brown eyes held a spark that made adults stop and take notice, a depth of understanding that was both beautiful and slightly unsettling. "Mama, why is the nice man crying?" Emma asked softly, her small hand gently holding Jake's chubby fingers while her eyes never left Alexander's face. There was genuine concern in her voice, the kind of empathy that came naturally to children who had experienced their own share of hardship and pain. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she watched her daughter's compassionate response to a stranger's suffering. "Misha, we shouldn't bother Mr. Hayes right now. He's having a very difficult day, and we should leave him alone to handle his important business." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she studied Alexander's face with the kind of intensity that made adults feel exposed and vulnerable, as if she could see straight through to their souls. She had always been different from other children her age, her mind working in ways that amazed and sometimes frightened those around her. While other children her age were playing with dolls and watching cartoons, Emma was reading technical manuals she found in the building's recycling bins, teaching herself complex concepts that college students struggled to understand. "The numbers on your screen," Emma said quietly, taking a tentative step closer to Alexander's massive mahogany desk. "They're going down really fast because someone took your money through the computer, right? Someone was very mean to you." Alexander looked up from his screens, genuinely surprised by the child's perceptive observation and mature understanding of the situation. Through his tears and exhaustion, he managed a weak smile, touched by her innocent concern for his welfare. "That's exactly right, sweetheart. A very bad person did something terrible to my company and hurt a lot of people in the process." Emma's expression grew serious as she studied the multiple monitors displaying the ongoing chaos. Stock charts plummeted like red waterfalls, emergency news alerts flashed urgent warnings in bright colors, and security protocols scrolled endlessly across the screens like digital prayers that weren't being answered. For a long moment, the 7-year-old girl stood perfectly still, her brilliant mind processing information at a speed that would have impressed seasoned cybersecurity experts with decades of experience. "I can fix it," she whispered, her words barely audible but carrying a weight that seemed to stop time itself. The silence in the room was absolutely deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the building's air conditioning system and the muffled sounds of traffic 42 floors below. Alexander stopped his frantic pacing immediately and turned to stare at the small girl who had just made what seemed like an utterly impossible claim. Maria gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth as she pulled both children closer to her protective embrace. Unsure of what her daughter was thinking, "Emma, what did you say?" Alexander asked, his voice barely audible as he struggled to process what he had just heard. He must have misunderstood. There was no way a 7-year-old child could have said what he thought she said. The 7-year-old's intelligent brown eyes never left the computer screens that continued to display his company's ongoing destruction. "I said I can fix it," she repeated with quiet confidence that sent chills down Alexander's spine. "I can bring your money back and stop the bad people who took it from you. I can make everything okay again." "Sweetheart, this is very complicated adult business," Alexander said gently, forcing himself to remain calm as he knelt down to Emma's eye level. His knees protested against the hard marble floor, but he wanted to look directly into her eyes when he explained why her offer, while touching, was impossible. "The best cybersecurity experts in the entire world are working on this problem right now, and they haven't been able to figure out how to fix it. These are people who went to the best universities and have been doing this kind of work for 20 or 30 years. "They're looking in the wrong places," Emma interrupted, her young voice steady and certain in a way that made Alexander's blood run cold. "The attack didn't come from where they think it did. It didn't come from outside your building or from hackers in other countries. It came from inside your own system, but not from an employee like they're probably thinking. Someone planted a sleeping virus months and months ago, hiding it where no one would think to look, waiting for exactly the right moment to wake up and cause all this trouble." Alexander's blood ran cold as the implications of her words sank in. How could a 7-year-old child possibly know that crucial detail? The FBI's cybercrime unit had just finished briefing him on their preliminary findings less than an hour ago, and they hadn't even discovered that specific information yet. Their top investigators were still trying to determine whether the attack had come from outside the company or from within. And here was a child who seemed to understand the situation better than trained professionals. "Emma, how do you possibly know this?" he whispered, his voice shaking with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "And how can you see things that experts with all their training and experience can't see?" The little girl looked down at baby Jake, who was babbling softly and reaching for the bright yellow fabric of her worn dress with his tiny, chubby fingers. Her expression became sad and distant, as if she was remembering something painful that she rarely allowed herself to think about. "Because I see patterns that others don't see," she explained quietly. "Numbers and codes talk to me in a way they don't talk to other people. It's like they're speaking a special language that only I can understand. Mama says I'm special, but sometimes being special is really lonely because no one else sees the world the way I do." Maria's tears flowed freely now as she listened to her daughter explain the gift that had both amazed and isolated her throughout her short life. "Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you something important about Emma," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "She's not like other children her age. She's never been like other children. When she was only 4 years old, she fixed our neighbor's computer that 3 different technicians couldn't repair, even after they worked on it for hours and hours. Last year, she helped the corner store owner figure out why his cash register system kept crashing every few days. She sees things in technology that adults with college degrees and years of training miss completely." Alexander's mind raced as he tried to process this information. Could it really be possible? Could this small child actually understand something that his team of highly paid experts had missed? The desperation in his chest grew stronger as he watched his company's value continue to plummet on the screens behind him. Each passing minute costing him millions of dollars and destroying the livelihoods of thousands of employees who depended on Hayes Technologies for their survival. "Even if what you're saying is true," he said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady, "why would you want to help me? You don't even know me. We've never met before today, and you don't owe me anything." Emma's expression grew incredibly sad as she looked around the luxurious office, taking in the expensive artwork, the imported leather furniture, and the crystal awards that decorated the shelves. Then she looked down at her own worn shoes that had holes in them and had been repaired with duct tape more than once. "Because Jake and I haven't eaten anything in 2 whole days," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mama lost her other job last week, and she's too proud to ask anyone for help, even when we're really hungry. I heard you talking to your assistant yesterday about how you give money to children's charities and help kids who don't have enough food or warm clothes. I thought maybe if I helped you, you might help us too." Her voice trailed off, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud. Alexander felt his heart breaking into 1,000,000 pieces as the reality of their desperate situation finally sank in completely. This brilliant little girl and her innocent baby brother were literally starving, and here he was, devastated about losing money while they couldn't even afford their next meal. Alexander stood up slowly, his legs shaking slightly as his mind reeled from everything he had just heard. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here he was, panicking about financial losses that wouldn't actually change his lifestyle in any meaningful way, while a hungry child was offering to save his empire with nothing but the hope of a meal in return. But there was something extraordinary in Emma's eyes, a spark of intelligence and determination unlike anything he had ever seen in someone so young, or even in most adults for that matter. "Emma," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "if you really think you can help me, I need you to understand something very important. This isn't just about my money or my company's stock price. If Hayes Technologies fails, if we can't recover from this attack, thousands and thousands of people will lose their jobs. Families with children just like you and Jake will suddenly have no income. The ripple effect will hurt so many innocent people who had nothing to do with what happened here today." The 7-year-old nodded solemnly, her mature understanding of the situation both impressive and heartbreaking. "I understand completely," she said. "That's exactly why I want to help you. It's not fair that bad people can hurt so many good families just because they're angry or greedy. Everyone deserves to feel safe and have enough food to eat." Alexander felt a lump forming in his throat as he realized that this child, who had every reason to be bitter about her own circumstances, was thinking about the welfare of complete strangers. "Emma, what do you need from me? What would you want in return for your help?" Emma's voice became barely a whisper, and she pulled Jake closer to her side, wrapping her thin arms around his small body protectively. "I need you to promise me something really important. If I fix this, if I actually save your company and bring back all the money, you'll take care of Jake. Not me, just Jake. He's only a baby and he deserves a chance at a good life with someone who can give him everything he needs to grow up happy and healthy. The request hit Alexander like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the wind out of him completely. Emma, what are you saying? You want me to adopt your baby brother, but not you. You want to be separated from the person you love most in the world. Tears began forming in Emma's bright brown eyes, but her voice remained steady and determined. Jake is all I have in this whole world, and I love him more than anything else that exists. But I'm smart enough to know that Mama can't take care of both of us properly, no matter how hard she tries. She works 16 hours a day sometimes, but it's still not enough money. If something bad happens to her, what will happen to Jake? He needs security, education, healthcare, and a real family that can give him opportunities I can't. Maria gasped, finally understanding the full scope of what Emma was proposing. Misha, no! I would never let anyone separate you two. You belong together. But Emma shook her head firmly. Mama, you know I'm right about this. Jake needs more than we can give him right now. This man has all the resources to give Jake everything. The best schools, doctors, food, clothes, toys, and a safe place to live. I can take care of myself because I'm smart and strong, but Jake can't. He's just a baby. Alexander felt tears forming in his own eyes as he witnessed what might have been the most selfless act he had ever seen in his entire life. This 7-year-old girl, who had nothing and was desperately hungry, was willing to sacrifice her own future and give up the person she loved most to ensure her baby brother had the best possible chance at a good life. Emma, I can't accept that arrangement, he said firmly, his voice growing stronger with conviction. If what you're saying is true, if you can really help me save my company, then I absolutely insist on helping both of you. I won't separate you from Jake under any circumstances. Emma's eyes widened with surprise and a flicker of hope that she had tried so hard to suppress. But that's not what I asked for. I just want Jake to be safe and happy and have everything he needs. And Jake will never be truly happy without his big sister who loves him so much, Alexander replied without hesitation. Besides, if you're as brilliant as you seem to be, just imagine what we could accomplish together. You could help so many people with your incredible gift. You could change the world, Emma. For the first time since entering his office, Emma smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile that seemed to light up her entire face and transform the atmosphere of the room from despair to possibility. The next few hours passed in a blur of disbelief, wonder, and barely controlled chaos. Alexander had made a decision that went against every logical, rational bone in his body. He was going to let a 7-year-old girl attempt to fix a $900 million cyber attack that had completely stumped his entire team of highly trained IT security professionals. His legal team would probably have him committed if they knew what he was considering, but something deep in his gut told him that Emma was exactly what she appeared to be, a genuine prodigy. Emma sat at his personal computer, her small legs dangling from the expensive executive chair that had been designed for someone 3 times her size. Her tiny fingers flew across the keyboard with a speed and precision that defied not only her age, but the laws of physics as Alexander understood them. He watched in complete amazement as lines of complex code appeared on the screen, intricate algorithms and programming structures that he could barely comprehend despite his own extensive technical background and computer science degree from MIT. "There," Emma said softly, pointing to a section of code that looked like complete gibberish to Alexander's untrained eye. "That's where they hid their weapon. See how this subroutine looks completely normal and innocent, but it has an extra parameter hidden inside it that shouldn't exist. It's been collecting information about your company's financial patterns and waiting patiently for someone to send it a trigger command." Alexander leaned closer, squinting at the screen and trying to follow her explanation. "I'm sorry, but I don't see what you're seeing. It all looks like random letters and numbers to me." Emma's fingers continued typing at lightning speed as she patiently explained her process. Most people look at computer code like they're reading a book, line by line, left to right, following the words in order. But I see it like a giant picture, like a puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together perfectly to create something beautiful. When something doesn't belong, when a piece is in the wrong place or doesn't match the pattern, it stands out to me like a bright red balloon floating in a field of white flowers. Behind them, Maria sat in a corner chair holding Jake, both of them watching in silent amazement as Emma worked her magic. The baby seemed to sense the importance of the moment, staying unusually quiet and calm in his mother's arms instead of demanding attention or crying for food as he normally would. "How did you learn to do this?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious about how a child could have developed such extraordinary skills. "Where did you get this kind of training?" Emma paused in her typing for just a moment, a small smile crossing her face as she remembered happier times. "When I was 5 years old, I found a broken laptop computer in the dumpster behind our apartment building. Someone had thrown it away because they thought it was completely dead and couldn't be fixed. Mama let me keep it, thinking it would just be a toy for me to play pretend with. But I figured out how to fix it by watching YouTube videos on the computers at the public library. Once I got it working again, I started learning everything I possibly could about how computers think and communicate with each other." She resumed typing, her young face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the monitor. "The attack on your company came from someone who knew your system very, very well. They planted this virus months ago, probably during what looked like a routine software update that nobody would question. It's been learning your patterns, studying when you make your biggest transactions, memorizing your security protocols, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike when it would cause the maximum amount of damage." Alexander's phone buzzed with another emergency notification, the sound making his heart skip a beat. His stock price had dropped another 15% in just the last hour. News outlets were beginning to pick up the story, and social media was already buzzing with rumors and speculation. Investor confidence was plummeting rapidly, and he could feel the weight of thousands of jobs hanging in the balance. "Emma, I believe in you completely, but we're running out of time very quickly," he said, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "Every single minute that passes, more damage is done to the company's reputation and trustworthiness. Even if we manage to recover all the money, the trust of our clients and investors might be gone forever. Some damage can't be undone with code." Emma's typing became more frantic, her small brow furrowed in intense concentration. I know. I can feel the pressure too. I'm almost there, I promise. I can see the exact pathway they used to get into your system, but I need to trace it back carefully without triggering their fail-safes and emergency protocols. If I move too quickly or make the wrong move, they'll realize we found them and could delete all the evidence and make everything disappear forever." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the entire building, their shrill sound echoing off the walls and creating an atmosphere of genuine emergency. Security protocols were activating automatically, and Alexander's phone started ringing non-stop with calls from every department head in the company. The situation was escalating beyond just a financial crisis. It was becoming a full-scale emergency that could destroy everything he had spent his entire adult life building from the ground up. The alarms continued wailing like banshees throughout the Hayes Technologies building, their piercing sound creating an atmosphere of panic and urgency that could be felt in every corner of the 42 floors. Emma's small fingers moved even faster across the keyboard, her concentration so intense that she seemed completely oblivious to the chaos surrounding her. Alexander's phone was buzzing incessantly with calls from board members, investors, government officials, and media outlets, each ring adding another layer of pressure to an already impossible situation. "Sir, the FBI cybercrime unit has arrived." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom system, barely audible over the continuing alarms. "They're demanding immediate access to all computer systems, and they're threatening to seize everything if we don't cooperate right now." Alexander looked down at Emma, who was so deeply focused on her work that she hadn't even acknowledged the announcement. Her young face was a mask of concentration, her eyes darting between multiple windows of code that she had opened simultaneously. "Tell them I need just 5 more minutes," he replied, though he wasn't sure if Emma even had that much time before the attackers realized they had been discovered and activated whatever final protocols they had in place. "I can see them," Emma whispered suddenly, her voice filled with excitement and satisfaction. "The people who did this terrible thing to you, they're watching the news coverage right now, sitting somewhere safe and celebrating what they think is their victory. But they made a big mistake. They left a digital fingerprint in the celebration code they wrote for themselves." "What do you mean by that?" Alexander asked, leaning closer to the screen and trying to follow her explanation. Emma's small finger pointed to a section of code that looked like complete gibberish to Alexander's untrained eye. When programmers write malicious code, especially when they're feeling proud of themselves, sometimes they leave little hidden messages for themselves, like digital graffiti on a wall. This person wrote a secret message buried deep in the code that says, "Gotcha, Hayes. You thought you were so smart." But every single keystroke leaves a unique signature behind, like a fingerprint that can't be changed or hidden. "I can trace this message back to the exact computer that wrote it, and then find out who was using that computer." Maria gasped from across the room, her eyes wide with amazement. "Mija, you can really do that? You can find the actual people who did this?" "I'm doing it right now, Mama," Emma replied, never taking her eyes off the screen. "But the really hard part isn't finding them. That's actually pretty easy if you know what to look for. The hard part is reversing everything they did without destroying all the evidence that the police and FBI will need to arrest them and put them in jail where they belong." Alexander's heart pounded in his chest as he watched lines of code scroll past, faster than he could possibly read. Numbers and letters flashed by in patterns that meant nothing to him, but apparently told Emma everything she needed to know. "Emma, the FBI agents are getting really impatient. My assistant says they're about to override my request and take control of all the systems whether I like it or not." 30 more seconds, Emma said, her voice steady and confident despite the enormous pressure. "I need to copy their attack method exactly and then reverse it like rewinding a movie. Every single transaction they moved, I'm moving back to where it belongs. Every file they corrupted or damaged, I'm repairing with the backup data they didn't know existed." Suddenly, the screens around the office began showing completely different numbers. The stock price, which had been falling like a stone for hours, stopped its descent and began slowly climbing back up. Transaction records that had shown massive losses started correcting themselves in real time. Account balances that had shown 0 began repopulating with their original amounts, growing larger by the second. "It's actually working," Alexander breathed, hardly believing what he was seeing with his own eyes. "Emma, you're really doing it." Emma continued typing furiously, sweat beading on her young forehead despite the air conditioning. "I'm not just fixing what they broke," she explained between keystrokes. "I'm making sure they can never ever do this again to you or anyone else. I'm creating a protective shield around your entire system that learns from attacks and adapts to new threats automatically. It's like giving your computer network an immune system that gets stronger every time someone tries to hurt it." The office door burst open with tremendous force, and 3 FBI agents in dark suits rushed in, followed by Alexander's panicked assistant and several building security guards. "Sir, we need immediate access to all systems right now." The lead agent stopped mid-sentence as he caught sight of the screens showing the miraculous recovery taking place in real time. "How is this even possible?" he asked, staring at the rapidly improving numbers and data streams. "Our best experts said this would take weeks to fix, if it could be fixed at all." Alexander looked down at Emma, who had finally stopped typing and was now reaching for baby Jake, who had fallen asleep peacefully in his mother's arms during all the chaos and excitement. "Gentlemen," Alexander said with a mixture of incredible pride and complete amazement. "He'd like you to meet the youngest cybersecurity expert in the entire world." 3 hours later, the Hayes Technologies building had completely transformed from a scene of panic, despair, and impending doom into one of celebration, disbelief, and cautious optimism. The FBI agents, who had initially been skeptical of Alexander's claims about a 7-year-old computer genius, had spent the last 2 hours thoroughly verifying every aspect of Emma's work. Not only had she successfully reversed the devastating cyber attack, but she had also provided them with enough digital evidence to track down and arrest the perpetrators. A group of 3 disgruntled former employees who had been planning their elaborate revenge scheme for over 8 months. Alexander sat in his leather office chair, still trying to process everything that had happened in what felt like both the longest and shortest day of his entire life. Emma was curled up in the large guest chair nearby, finally allowing herself to rest after her incredible feat, while Jake slept peacefully in her protective arms. Maria sat beside them in another chair, tears of relief, gratitude, and overwhelming pride streaming down her weathered cheeks as she watched her extraordinary daughter. "Mr. Hayes," Agent Rodriguez, the lead FBI investigator, said as he prepared to leave with his team, "what this young lady accomplished here today is nothing short of extraordinary. She not only saved your company from complete financial ruin, but she potentially prevented similar attacks on dozens of other businesses that these criminals were planning to target next. The security system she designed and implemented in real time is more sophisticated and effective than anything our own cybersecurity experts have seen in their entire careers." Alexander nodded, still watching Emma with a sense of wonder that hadn't diminished even slightly. "Agent Rodriguez, what happens now? To Emma and her family, I mean. Are there any legal issues we need to be concerned about?" The agent smiled warmly, his stern professional demeanor softening as he looked at the sleeping child. "Well, sir, that's not really an FBI matter anymore, but if I were in your position, I'd make absolutely sure that brilliant mind gets every opportunity to flourish and grow. The world desperately needs more people like her, people who use their gifts to help others instead of hurting them." After the agents and security personnel left, the office fell into a comfortable silence. Alexander approached Emma, who was now awake but still holding her sleeping brother protectively, as if she couldn't quite believe that their nightmare might finally be over. "Emma," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair so they could speak at eye level, "I want to keep every single promise I made to you today. I want to make sure both you and Jake have everything you need. The best education money can buy, healthcare, opportunities, and most importantly, a loving family. But I need to ask you something very important first." Emma looked up at him with those intelligent brown eyes that seemed to hold wisdom far beyond her 7 years on Earth. "Would you and Jake like to come live with me permanently? Not as my employees or helpers, but as my real family. I want to legally adopt both of you if you and your mother agree to it." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time all day, they were tears of pure joy and relief. "You really mean it? Both of us together? You won't change your mind later?" "Both of you, forever," Alexander confirmed without hesitation. "Jake will have the best possible future, and you'll have access to every resource you need to develop your incredible gift. You could help so many people, Emma. You could literally change the world with what you can do." Maria stood up slowly, her own tears flowing freely as she struggled to find words adequate for the moment. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know how to begin thanking you. Emma has always been special, different from other children. But I never imagined something like this could happen. You're giving them opportunities I could never provide, no matter how hard I worked." Alexander stood and faced Maria directly. "Maria, you raised the most extraordinary daughter I've ever met. Your love, support, and sacrifice gave her the confidence and moral foundation to take the risk that saved my company today. I want to make sure you're part of this new family too. If you'll have me, I'd be honored if you'd stay on, not as an employee but as family." As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light through the floor-to-ceiling windows and painting the office in warm, hopeful colors, Emma looked up at Alexander with a smile that seemed to illuminate the entire room. "Mr. Hayes," she said quietly, her voice filled with happiness and anticipation. "I think this is the beginning of something really wonderful for all of us. Jake is going to love having a daddy, and I can't wait to learn everything you can teach me about helping people." Alexander smiled back, knowing with absolute certainty that his life had been forever changed by a hungry 7-year-old girl who saw the world differently than anyone else. He had lost $900 million that morning, but by evening he had gained something infinitely more valuable: a family, a purpose, and a future filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. 6 months had passed since that life-changing day, and the Hayes mansion in the prestigious Upper East Side had become something Alexander never thought possible: a real home filled with laughter, wonder, and the kind of joy that only children could bring. The sprawling estate, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, had been transformed from a cold showpiece into a warm sanctuary where Emma's brilliant mind could flourish and baby Jake could grow up surrounded by love and unlimited possibilities. Emma had adapted to her new life with remarkable grace, though Alexander often caught glimpses of the profound intelligence that still amazed him daily. She had her own fully equipped computer lab on the 3rd floor, complete with the most advanced hardware money could buy, but she spent most of her time in the family room, helping Jake learn to walk and teaching him simple words. The transformation in both children had been extraordinary. Jake was thriving with proper nutrition and medical care, while Emma had blossomed into a confident young girl who no longer carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders. "Daddy Alex," Emma called from the kitchen, her voice echoing through the hallway. She had started calling him that 3 months ago, and every time she said it, Alexander felt his heart swell with pride and love he never knew existed. Jake said his first real word today. Alexander rushed into the kitchen, where Maria was preparing lunch, and Jake was sitting in his high chair, babbling happily while playing with colorful blocks. The baby had grown considerably, his cheeks now full and rosy, his eyes bright with curiosity and mischief. Gone were the days of hunger and uncertainty. Jake was becoming the happy, healthy toddler he was always meant to be. "What did he say?" Alexander asked, picking up Jake and spinning him gently in the air, causing the little boy to giggle with pure delight. "He said Emma," she announced proudly, her face glowing with happiness. "He's been trying to say it for weeks, but this morning it came out perfectly clear. He loves his big sister so much." Alexander felt tears forming in his eyes as he watched the bond between the siblings. In the past 6 months, he had learned that love wasn't just an emotion. It was a daily choice, a commitment to putting someone else's needs before your own. These children had taught him what it really meant to be a family, and he couldn't imagine his life without them. "That's incredible, sweetheart," he said, settling Jake back into his chair. "You've been such a wonderful teacher to him." But Emma's expression suddenly grew serious, and Alexander noticed the familiar look she got when her brilliant mind was processing something complex. "Daddy Alex, I need to tell you something important. Last night, when I was working on my computer, I found something strange in the news reports about other companies." Alexander's attention sharpened immediately. Even though the attack on Hayes Technologies had been resolved, Emma had continued monitoring cybersecurity threats as a hobby, often identifying vulnerabilities that she reported to the appropriate authorities. Her unofficial work had already prevented 3 smaller attacks on other businesses. "What did you find?" he asked, sitting down at the kitchen table so they could talk at eye level. Emma pulled out a tablet and showed him several news articles she had bookmarked. "There have been 7 more cyber attacks in the past month, all targeting companies that help children, orphanages, schools, children's hospitals. The attacks are getting more sophisticated, and they're all using variations of the same code signature I found in our attack. Alexander's blood ran cold as he read the headlines. Emma, are you saying someone is specifically targeting organizations that help kids? Not just someone, Emma said quietly, her young voice heavy with concern. I think it's the same group that attacked your company. The people the FBI arrested might have been working for someone bigger, someone who's still out there and really angry that their plan failed. Maria stopped her cooking and turned to listen, her maternal instincts immediately sensing danger. Alexander felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach as he realized that their peaceful new life might be under threat. Have you told anyone else about this? He asked. Emma shook her head. I wanted to tell you first. But Daddy Alex, I think they might try to hurt us because I stopped them before. What if they come after Jake and me? Alexander reached over and took Emma's small hands in his own. Sweetheart, I promise you that nothing will happen to you or Jake. We have the best security money can buy, and if there really is a threat out there, we'll deal with it together. But I need you to show me everything you've found. As Emma began explaining her discoveries, Alexander realized that their story was far from over. The brilliant little girl who had saved his company might have inadvertently made herself a target, and he would do whatever it took to protect his new family from the shadows that seemed to be gathering around them. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor that would change everything once again. Alexander was in his home office, reviewing Emma's research about the mysterious cyber attacks, when his head of security announced that FBI agent Rodriguez was at the front gate requesting an urgent meeting. The same agent who had witnessed Emma's miraculous work 6 months ago now stood in Alexander's study with a grim expression that immediately put everyone on edge. Mr. Hayes, Emma, Agent Rodriguez said as they gathered in the comfortable family room. I'm afraid I have some disturbing news that concerns your family directly. Emma, who had been playing with Jake on the carpet, immediately stood up and moved closer to Alexander. Her intuitive understanding of adult emotions had always been remarkably acute, and she could sense the tension in the room. The 3 men we arrested for the attack on Hayes Technologies have been talking, Agent Rodriguez continued. They've provided information about a larger criminal organization that has been targeting tech companies and charitable organizations across the country. This group calls themselves the Reset, and their goal is to destroy what they see as corrupt capitalist systems and redistribute wealth through cyber warfare. Alexander felt his heart racing. Agent Rodriguez, are you saying my family is in danger? I'm afraid so, the agent replied grimly. According to our sources, the Reset has identified Emma as a significant threat to their operations. They believe that her ability to counter their attacks makes her a primary target. They're planning something they call Operation Clean Slate, a coordinated attack on multiple targets simultaneously, designed to cause maximum economic disruption. Emma's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. They want to hurt more innocent people, and they think I'll try to stop them again. That's exactly right, Agent Rodriguez confirmed. But Emma, we have a proposition for you. The FBI's Cybersecurity Division wants to offer you a special consultation position. You would work with our top experts to help prevent these attacks before they happen. Of course, you would have full protection, and your family's safety would be our top priority. Alexander immediately shook his head. Absolutely not. Emma is 7 years old. I won't put her in harm's way, no matter how important this is. But Emma stepped forward, her young face showing a determination that reminded Alexander of the day she had first offered to help him. Daddy Alex, if I don't help, how many innocent people will get hurt? How many families like ours will lose everything? Emma, you don't understand how dangerous these people are, Alexander said, his voice rising with emotion. They're not just hackers. They're criminals willing to destroy lives to make a point. But I do understand, Emma replied quietly. I understand that sometimes people with special gifts have to use them to help others. Even when it's scary, You taught me that being part of a family means protecting the people you love, and sometimes that means protecting people you don't even know yet. Maria, who had been listening quietly while holding Jake, finally spoke up. Mija, your papa is right. This is too dangerous for a little girl. Emma walked over to Maria and gently touched her arm. Mama, remember what you always told me when I was little and scared? You said that God gives special gifts to special people, and it's their responsibility to use those gifts to help others. Maybe this is why I can see things that other people can't. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Emma, if you agreed to help us, you wouldn't be working alone. You'd have a team of the best cybersecurity experts in the country supporting you, and most importantly, you'd be working from a secure location where your family would be completely safe. Alexander looked at Emma's determined face and felt a mixture of pride and terror. This extraordinary little girl, who should have been worried about homework and playground games, was instead thinking about saving innocent people from financial ruin. How had his life become a situation where a 7-year-old was being asked to help fight international criminals? I need time to think about this, Alexander said finally. This is not a decision I can make lightly. But Emma had already made up her mind. Daddy Alex, I want to help. These bad people hurt our family once, and now they want to hurt other families. If I can stop them, then I have to try. As Alexander looked into Emma's determined brown eyes, he realized that the little girl who had saved his company was about to face her greatest challenge yet. The secure FBI facility in Quantico, Virginia, was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Located deep underground, the Cybersecurity Command Center looked like something from a science fiction movie, with wall-to-wall monitors displaying data streams from around the world, and dozens of agents working at sophisticated computer stations. Alexander had insisted on staying with Emma throughout the entire operation, and Jake and Maria were safely housed in a protected wing of the facility under round-the-clock security. Welcome to Operation Safeguard, Agent Rodriguez said as he led Emma and Alexander through the high-tech facility. This is where we monitor cyber threats against critical infrastructure, financial institutions, and government systems. Today, you're going to help us prevent the largest coordinated cyber attack in U.S. history. Emma's eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the impressive technology surrounding her. How many bad people are we trying to stop? According to our intelligence, the reset has recruited over 50 hackers from around the world. Special Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI's lead cybersecurity expert, explained as she joined them. They're planning to attack banks, hospitals, power grids, and major corporations simultaneously at exactly noon Eastern Time today. If they succeed, it could crash the entire economy and put millions of lives at risk. Alexander felt sick to his stomach. And you think Emma can stop all of that? Agent Chen smiled warmly at Emma. Emma, we've studied your work on the Hayes Technologies attack, and frankly, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Your ability to see patterns and connections in code is extraordinary. We believe you might be able to identify their attack vectors before they execute their plan. Emma nodded seriously. Where do I start? For the next 3 hours, Emma worked alongside the FBI's top cybersecurity experts, her small fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she analyzed thousands of lines of code and data patterns. Alexander watched in amazement as his 7-year-old daughter, for that's what she had become in his heart, collaborated with seasoned professionals who had decades of experience. There, Emma suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a section of code on one of the monitors. I found their command center. They're using a distributed network to hide their location, but they made the same mistake as before. They left emotional signatures in their code. Agent Chen leaned over Emma's shoulder. What do you mean by emotional signatures? When people write code, especially when they're angry or excited, they include little personal touches that reveal their feelings, Emma explained. Look at this variable naming pattern. They're using words related to fire and destruction. but in a specific sequence that tells me they're working from multiple locations, but following orders from one central command. Alexander watched as the room full of experts began following Emma's lead. Their respect for her abilities evident in how carefully they listened to her explanations. Despite her age, she was clearly the most gifted person in the room. "Emma, can you trace the command center's location?" Agent Rodriguez asked. Emma's brow furrowed in concentration as she continued typing. "I think so, but they're using really sophisticated encryption. It's like they're speaking in a secret language that changes every few minutes." "How long do we have?" Agent Chen asked, checking her watch. The countdown clock on the wall showed 11:30 a.m. "I need 15 more minutes," Emma said, her voice steady despite the enormous pressure. "But I think I can do more than just find them. I think I can turn their own attack back on them." Alexander felt his heart racing as he realized that the fate of the entire country might rest in the hands of his 7-year-old daughter. But as he watched Emma work with calm determination, he knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With only 10 minutes remaining until the planned attack, the tension in the FBI command center was palpable. Every agent in the room was watching Emma work, their faces a mixture of hope and disbelief as the 7-year-old girl raced against time to prevent a national catastrophe. Alexander stood behind her chair, his hands gently resting on her shoulders for support, while Agent Chen coordinated with field teams across the country. "Emma, talk to me," Agent Rodriguez said, his voice calm but urgent. "What are you seeing?" Emma's eyes never left the screen as her fingers continued their lightning-fast dance across the keyboard. "I found their weakness," she said, her young voice filled with excitement. "They're so proud of how smart they think they are that they built their attack to send a message when it's complete. But that message protocol is two-way, which means I can send something back to them." "What kind of something?" Agent Chen asked, leaning closer to watch Emma's work. "I'm creating a reverse virus," Emma explained, her concentration so intense that she seemed unaware of the dozens of adults hanging on her every word. "Instead of destroying their targets, it's going to trace back through their network and shut down their systems. It's like they're planning to shoot arrows at us, but I'm turning their arrows around to fly back at them." Alexander felt a surge of pride mixed with terror as he watched his daughter take on one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations in the world. "Emma, are you sure this will work?" "I'm sure, Daddy Alex," she replied confidently, "but I need everyone to be very quiet for the next few minutes. This is the hardest part, and I need to concentrate completely." The room fell silent except for the soft clicking of Emma's keyboard and the distant hum of computer servers. On the main screen, a map of the United States showed dozens of red dots representing the targets that the reset planned to attack. Each dot pulsed like a heartbeat, counting down to what could be the worst cyber attack in history. 2 minutes until attack time," Agent Chen announced softly. Emma suddenly stopped typing and leaned back in her chair. "It's done," she said simply. "I've sent my virus into their network. When they try to launch their attack, it will trigger my countermeasures instead." "What happens then?" Alexander asked. Emma smiled for the first time in hours. "Then all their computers will display a message that says, 'You've been stopped by a 7-year-old girl who believes in helping people instead of hurting them. Maybe you should try being nice for a change.'" Despite the tension, several agents chuckled at Emma's message. Agent Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. "Emma, you're going to put a lot of cybersecurity experts out of work." "1 minute," Agent Chen called out. Everyone in the room watched the countdown clock as it approached noon. At exactly 12 p.m. Eastern Time, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. But instead of the chaos that everyone expected, something extraordinary happened. The red dots on the map began turning green, one by one, as the reset's attack was not only stopped, but completely reversed. "Incoming report from New York Field Office," an agent called out. "They're reporting that multiple hacker locations have been identified and are being raided simultaneously." "Chicago office confirms the same," another agent reported. "The suspect's computers are displaying Emma's message." Agent Rodriguez turned to Emma with a look of absolute amazement. Emma, you didn't just stop their attack. You helped us locate and arrest the entire network. Emma stood up from her chair and walked over to Alexander, who immediately wrapped her in a huge hug. Daddy Alex, can we go home now? I want to see Jake and make sure he's okay. Alexander held his daughter tight, tears streaming down his face. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home. You've saved enough people for one day. As they prepared to leave the facility, Agent Chen approached them with a serious expression. Emma, there's something you should know. The leader of the reset, the person who's been coordinating all these attacks, was captured in the raids. And you're not going to believe who it is. The revelation that Agent Chen was about to share would shock everyone in ways they never could have imagined. As Emma, Alexander, and the FBI team gathered around a secure monitor, Agent Chen pulled up a file that made Alexander's blood run cold. On the screen was the mugshot of someone he recognized immediately, Dr. Marcus Webb, his former business partner, and the man he had trusted with some of his company's most sensitive information. That's Dr. Webb, Alexander said, his voice barely a whisper. He helped me build Hayes Technologies in the early days. We had a falling out about 5 years ago, when I discovered he was embezzling money from the company. Emma looked up at Alexander with concern. You know the bad man who's been trying to hurt people? I thought I knew him, Alexander replied, still staring at the screen in disbelief. Marcus was brilliant, but he became obsessed with the idea that technology companies were destroying society. When I fired him and pressed charges, he swore he would make me pay for ruining his life. Agent Rodriguez pulled up additional files. Dr. Webb has been planning this revenge for years. According to the evidence we've recovered, he specifically recruited the Reset members by convincing them that wealthy tech entrepreneurs like you were the root of all economic inequality. His ultimate goal wasn't just to steal money, it was to completely destroy your company and everyone associated with it. Emma's expression grew sad as she processed this information. He wanted to hurt you because he was angry and jealous, but he ended up hurting lots of innocent people instead. That's exactly right, Agent Chen confirmed. What makes this even more disturbing is that Dr. Webb specifically studied your work, Emma. He knew about your involvement in stopping the original attack, and he's been developing countermeasures designed to defeat your methods. Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying he was planning to target Emma directly? According to his files, yes, Agent Rodriguez said grimly. Operation Clean Slate was actually a trap designed to lure Emma into helping the FBI, at which point his team would launch a secondary attack specifically targeting the FBI systems while she was connected to them. Emma's eyes widened as she understood the implications. He wanted me to help stop one attack, so he could use that to launch an even bigger attack? Fortunately, your countermeasures were so effective that his backup plan never had a chance to activate, Agent Chen explained. But Emma, this means you weren't just fighting random criminals. You were fighting someone who knew you personally and was specifically trying to outsmart you. Alexander knelt down to Emma's level, his face serious with concern. Sweetheart, do you understand what this means? Dr. Webb studied your abilities and tried to find ways to defeat them. The fact that you still stopped him means you're even more special than we thought. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her brilliant mind processing the full scope of what had happened. Daddy Alex, Dr. Webb was wrong about something important. He thought that being smart meant using your abilities to hurt people who made you angry. But real intelligence means using your gifts to help people, even when they can't help you back. Agent Rodriguez smiled at Emma's wisdom. Emma, in all my years with the FBI, I've never worked with anyone who combined technical brilliance with such a good heart. Dr. Webb might have been smart, but he'll never be as smart as you because he forgot how to be kind. As they prepared to finally leave the FBI facility, Emma turned to Agent Chen with a question that surprised everyone. What will happen to Dr. Webb now? Will he go to prison forever? He'll face trial for cyber terrorism, which carries a very serious sentence, Agent Chen replied. Why do you ask? Emma looked thoughtful. I was wondering if maybe someone could teach him how to use his intelligence to help people instead of hurting them. Maybe if he learned how good it feels to make people happy instead of sad, he wouldn't want to be bad anymore. Alexander felt his heart swell with pride at his daughter's compassion. Even after everything Dr. Webb had put them through, Emma still believed in the possibility of redemption. As they finally headed home to their family, Alexander realized that Emma had taught him something invaluable about the true meaning of strength and forgiveness. 1 year later, the Hayes family had settled into a routine that balanced normalcy with the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. Emma had become something of a celebrity in cybersecurity circles, consulting with major tech companies and government agencies to improve their security systems. But Alexander had been careful to ensure that her work never interfered with her childhood, and she spent most of her time being a regular 8-year-old girl who happened to be raising her little brother with infinite love and patience. Jake, now 2 years old, was a happy, energetic toddler who followed Emma everywhere and seemed to understand that his big sister was special. He had started calling Alexander Dada 6 months ago, a moment that had moved the young millionaire to tears. The little boy showed no signs of Emma's technical genius, but he displayed an emotional intelligence and joyful spirit that brought light to everyone around him. "Emma, are you ready?" Alexander called from the bottom of the grand staircase. Today was a special day. They were attending the opening ceremony of the Emma Hayes Foundation for Cybersecurity Education, a non-profit organization that Alexander had established to teach underprivileged children about technology and computer safety. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing a beautiful blue dress that Maria had helped her choose, her long, dark hair styled in elegant curls. She was carrying Jake, who was dressed in a tiny suit and tie, looking absolutely adorable as he clapped his hands with excitement. "We're ready, Daddy Alex," Emma said, carefully making her way down the stairs. "Jake insisted on wearing his special tie today because he says it makes him look important." Alexander smiled as he watched his children. Over the past year, he had learned that wealth meant nothing compared to the richness of having a real family. These 2 children had taught him about love, sacrifice, and the importance of using privilege to help others rather than just accumulate more for himself. As they drove to the Foundation's headquarters, Emma was unusually quiet. Alexander noticed her thoughtful expression in the rearview mirror and decided to check on her. "What's on your mind?" "Sweetheart?" he asked. Emma looked out the window at the city passing by. "I was thinking about Dr. Webb. I got a letter from him last week." Alexander's attention sharpened immediately. "Emma, why didn't you tell me about this?" "Because I wanted to read it first and decide if it was important," she replied. "He wrote to say that he's been taking classes in prison about how to help people instead of hurting them. He said he was sorry for trying to hurt our family, and he asked if maybe someday I could teach him how to see code the way I do, but for good purposes, instead of bad ones." Alexander pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face Emma directly. "What do you think about that?" Emma considered the question carefully. "I think people can change if they really want to. Maybe Dr. Webb was just angry and lost, and now he's finding his way back to being good. If he really wants to help people, maybe we should give him a chance to prove it." "Emma, you're 8 years old. You shouldn't have to worry about rehabilitating criminals," Alexander said gently. "But Daddy Alex, if I can help him become good again, then maybe he can help other people too. Isn't that what our foundation is for? Teaching people to use technology to make the world better." Alexander felt that familiar surge of pride and amazement at his daughter's wisdom. "Emma, what did you want to do about his letter?" "I want to write him back and tell him about our foundation," she said. "Maybe when he gets out of prison someday, he can volunteer to teach kids about computer safety, but only if he proves that he really changed his heart." As they continued their drive to the foundation opening, Alexander reflected on how much his life had changed since that desperate day when Emma had first offered to help him. He had thought he was saving her and Jake, but in reality, they had saved him. They had taught him that true success wasn't measured in dollars or stock prices, but in the positive impact you could have on other people's lives. At the foundation ceremony, Emma gave a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. She talked about how technology should be used to bring people together, not tear them apart, and how every child deserved the chance to learn and grow, regardless of their circumstances. As Alexander watched his daughter speak with confidence and compassion to an audience of hundreds, he knew that the little girl who had once been hungry and desperate had grown into someone who would change the world. And standing beside him, holding his hand tightly, was Jake, the little boy who would grow up knowing that family wasn't about blood or money, but about love, loyalty, and the commitment to take care of each other no matter what challenges life might bring. The Hayes family had found their happily ever after, not in the fairy tale sense of perfect endings, but in the real-world understanding that love, combined with the courage to help others, could overcome any obstacle and create something beautiful from even the most desperate circumstances.